Okay, B'Shem Hashem Na'aseh V'Natzliach. We're learning the Alie Shiur, the Musar, daily Musar. This is the second class. Those that want to follow and have the class, it's on page Kaf Daled. So he says, the Torah is the Torah of truth. You see where we are, Eitan?
Kaf Daled, yeah.
So the Torah, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter mentions this a lot, that the Torah is there essentially for us to get rid of our fake ideas. You understand? Which means there's a lot of people that have false ideals, false beliefs. For example, some people think the goal of life is just to have maximum pleasure. Some people think, God forbid, the goal of life is to have the maximum amount of womanizing. Some people think that the point of life, God forbid, is to have maximum money, right? So they'll work on Shabbat, right? They'll work on Yom Kippur. They'll do anything, right? They won't see their wife. They won't see their kids. And worst of all, they won't see themselves. They don't even know who they are anymore. So it says, Asher dafka bepetchot Gemara, the Gemara, the holy Gemara. When you open up, it destroys these idols, these false goals. You understand? And it says, Zichronot ha'avar. Also, you know, like right now, people have so much anxiety, right? There's a Moiridike Avos to Rab Nassan. He says, whoever puts Torah on his heart, God is going to take away Hirhure Avera, right? Your sexual thoughts of sinning, thoughts of what's going to be in the future, what's going to be in the past. Because if you're 24/7 get engulfed in the Torah, you realize you're connected to God. I was just learning with my Rabbi Moradian, who was so lucky to be able to have such great brother-in-laws. I was just learning him the Marchu. Yisrael v'kitshu b'richu kachadhu, right? What's the goal of being alive? Only people that have a relationship with God are alive. People that have no relationship with God are dead, right? How do you develop that relationship with Hashem? How? Through Torah. Because Jews, the Zohar says Torah, Hashem, and Jews are one entity. So it says, when you Zichronot ha'avar, you know, some people, they're chained, they're prisoners of their past. Other people have anxiety regarding the future, and I hate to say this, immobilizes them. You know what I mean, Eitan? Some people are obsessive compulsive, right? So some people, I'm not coming to say that some people need professional medical care, but for the regular human being, because the Torah is like a mikveh, and the Torah is compared to fire, right? Esh HaTorah. So when you really when you learn Torah in depth, that fire of Torah burns the what? All these fake worries and anxieties and ADHDs and OCDs, and right? You get to your goals. He says some people have a terrible problem of concentration because they're living a fake life. They're always in La La Land dreaming about Disney World and Star Wars and all these other nonsense. I'm on the last line of that paragraph. He says, once you realize what the goal of life is, and that is to know God, right? Like between a husband and wife, the deepest relationship is to actually know your wife, like a left hand and right hand, because they're really part of one. And our deepest connection to God is Torah. That's why Torah is the deepest mitzvah. You know why? Because through learning Torah, you know God. And knowing is the most deepest. That's why the first time when Adam When Adam Harishon has intimacy with Chava, it says Adam knew his wife, right? So it says, once you get rid of the nonsense in your head, then you can focus on Torah. Next paragraph. It says, David HaMelech throughout Tehillim says Torah was his, remember we said his passion? When you actually become engulfed and put 110% of your concentration in Torah, what happens is that you feel it like there's a famous Orach Chaim HaKadosh. The Orach Chaim says if people would actually be able to destroy their obsession with money or luxury or womanizing or all these other fake gods and idols they have, and would actually taste the sweetness of Torah, they would run to it like a magnet. The words of the Orach Chaim are so eloquent and beautiful. And he says there's a gishmak in learning, right? That the Torah, you see, because, right, the deepest pleasure is not that one of sexuality or eating or drinking, is knowing. Wow, why am I created? Wow, why? Like, what's the depths? That's why Zohar, by the way, we have to learn Gemara, Shas, Poskim, Tur, Bet Yosef, Rambam, right? But then we have to know Zohar, because Zohar even gives us a deeper appreciation of why the Torah is, what the mitzvot are. And it says, "Kasher dimyonot kosmim la'adam b'tzurim ha'naot v'hanagvot v'onzeh kasher lo misatam beruchniot." He says, when you're obsessed with materialism, the first book of Musar, you know what it is, Eitan? It's called Chovat HaLevavot. And it says, you have to have, if you're drowning in materialism, and that's your passion, then it's very hard to find any sweetness, in Torah. So he says, kind of like, David HaMelech in Tehillim says, you know what? Sur mera v'aseh tov. Stop sinning and then go do good. Because a lot of times, I want to tell you something, it's a little bit X-rated, but one of the godfathers of the Kiruv movement told me this. It's an amazing, amazing story. Rabbi Gershenfeld, which is the Rosh Yeshiva of where? You would think about going there. Rabbi Berish Gershenfeld. Beryl Gershenfeld. He's one of the main, it's in Harnof, the yeshiva. Machan Shlomo. The Rosh Yeshiva there told me an amazing story with Rav Scheinberg, Rav Pinchas Scheinberg Zatzal. He said one time, he had this group of students. They were very, very high IQ, but whatever he did, he was not able, the Torah wouldn't go. Any Masechta, any Musar he would learn, Mechtav Me'Eliyahu, anything he would learn, they couldn't get into it. Finally, he took him to Rav Pinchas Scheinberg, and I want to thank Shlomo Leib. It is unfortunate that in some of the yeshivot they don't talk about this. The subject is not taboo. You know what Rav Scheinberg said? And Rav Scheinberg was a Litvish Rosh Yeshiva. You know what Rav Scheinberg told Rabbi Gershenfeld? Rabbi Gershenfeld was totally burnt out. He had a group of guys. Any type of learning he was trying to do with them, it wouldn't sink in, right? It wouldn't. It was like there was a blockage from them being successful in their learning. You know what Rav Scheinberg told them? He asked the guys very frankly. He said, "Are you wasting your seed, ch.1 lebatala?" And Rabbi Gershenfeld saw all of them, their faces a little bit red, shaking their head. You understand? So, Torah is a holy subject. We have to put away the false gods of obsession with luxury, right? Obsession with physical pleasure, materialism, obsession with having kebab and sharab, the steak and wine every night, because if that's your impression, that's how the Rambam explains. You know, there's a Gemara we just had in the Daf Yomi. It says, oh, you're a Baal Korah. It says the Torah only lasts in somebody that's Zot Torah Adam ki yamut ba'ohel. Somebody that, it says the Torah only lasts in somebody that what is willing to kill himself over it. So the Rambam says, what? You're literally supposed to risk your life to learn Torah? No.
That's why you know the story.
No, it says right.
Shiva.
No, yeah. What it means is you have to kill your physical desires, your obsession with materialism, with instant gratification. Because as long as you are dying for the greatest pleasure and luxury and materialism, you're never going to be successful in Torah. And that's why. So he says this is the pillar of what he wants to base his whole book on. Once you realize that Torah is oxygen, a day that I didn't learn, see, that's the beauty of Daf Yomi. That's why I was always trying to really, Rav Ovadia used to do Daf Yomi. That's the glorious thing of Daf Yomi. You know what it is? Daf Yomi, what it does is, you realize I have to learn basically an hour of Gemara a day. If I miss that day, imagine if you miss 2-3 days. You know how hard it is to make it up? Ask anybody that learns the daf. So you know, it doesn't matter whether your kid is getting married, you're getting married, you're building the Taj Mahal. The Daf Yomi is this regimen of learning that I have to do every day. He says the basis of our relationship of becoming a Talmid Chacham is to know this, that the Torah is a must. Like you were saying, I'm married to it. I can't abandon it for a day. You know what? Because the Yerushalmi says, Azveni Yom Yomam Azveka. There's a pasuk in Tanakh. It says, if you leave me one day, I'm going to leave you 2 days. So if you leave the Torah, abandon the Torah one day, the Torah is going to abandon you what? 2 days. That's the Yerushalmi. I believe it's the Yerushalmi in Chagiga. So it says, so the second step is, get rid of the nonsense in your life, right? Know that we were created not to be ATM machines, right? Not like the average Persian Jewish man. And shame on all those Jewish women that are causing all these young Jewish boys, it makes me cry, going and marry shiksas because they demand a house in Brentwood or Beverly Hills or the latest and greatest car. What is this? Build a life together. What do you want to marry a good? You should. God bless my Rosh Hashiva. He was the greatest Talmid Chacham I knew personally. Are you there to marry money, or you want to build a life together? You work a little, he works a little. The main thing is not that the guy should be the wealthiest person in the world, or oh, God forbid, Chas v'Shalom, he shouldn't be a doctor. What is this? They wrote a Ner Shulchan Aruch for themselves, and they're destroying the Klal Yisrael. You have to get rid of the nonsense, and then the Torah will become the most pleasurable endeavor in the world. And you get it, arevus. This is, by the way, Eitan. I was just learning this today, this morning. The Shulchan Aruch, you could look it up. Siman Mem Zayin. Look it up in the Mishnah Berurah. Maran, the Shulchan Aruch writes, he says one of the brachot you have to be the most meticulous and careful to do with the most kavanas. You guess what? Birkat HaTorah. Because the Gemara in Nedarim Daf Pei Aleph says the reason the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed was because they didn't say the Berachat Torah. Every morning we say how many bracha in the Torah? 3. V'ha'erevna, one of the bracha Torah is we ask God that Torah shouldn't just be like forced, right? You know, some people, they go off the derech. You know why? Because their father puts a gun to their head and it's like, if you don't learn, you're not my son anymore. But we ask God, no, I should ha'erevna Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratecha befinu. You should make the Torah what? Like honey, sweet to me. It should be dear to me. And Rav Wolbe writes another place in the Alie Shiur, such something so beautiful. You know what he says, Eitan? We're going to finish right now at the end of this paragraph. He says, Arevut, Arev means 2 things. To mix, and also means to become dear and precious. He says if the Torah is precious to you and you learn Torah with love and joy, it gets mixed into your neshama and you never forget it. That's the, you understand? So, he's saying that okay, this love of learning is not going to come easy in the beginning, right? You're going to have to break your head. You know how hard it is to start learning Gemara and actually read a Rashi, Tosfot. And if you really want to understand Tosfot, you have to learn the Marsha. Now there's a cheater book, the Masifta. They actually read, they made everything easy, which is not necessarily a bad thing for our generation. That's why the Torah, the Gemara, there's a Gemara in Kiddushin, in the end, it says that when you learn Torah, you're like at war. You're at war with the Yetzer Hara, and you're at war with yourself because it's so hard sometimes to understand it. So you have to break your head over it. So this whole breaking your head over learning Torah is the essence of it, and this war against the Yetzer Hara is the fire of Torah, is the water of Torah, because the Torah also makes us holy. It gives meaning to our life, and it's only through the Torah that we can have a meaningful connection. And thank you everyone for watching. Bli Neder, let's join us together tomorrow.